Imagine carrying a hidden part of yourself, one you barely acknowledge, yet it silently shapes your thoughts, feelings, and actions every day. What if the key to true healing isn't about escaping that hidden self, but boldly facing it head-on? Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers on the human mind, believed that real transformation begins when we confront the deepest, often uncomfortable parts of who we are. It's in this courageous self-confrontation that we unlock the door to healing, authenticity, and profound inner freedom. Today, we'll explore how embracing our inner darkness and breaking free from the masks we wear can lead us on a powerful journey toward wholeness. This isn't just psychology, it's a roadmap to becoming truly alive. Carl Jung believed that the most important journey a person could ever take was not one that led to a distant land, but one that led inward into the depths of their own psyche. He saw healing not as something that could be prescribed from the outside, but as a process that begins with honest self-confrontation. For Jung, this meant facing the parts of ourselves we often try to avoid, our fears, weaknesses, suppressed desires, and all that we label as unacceptable. These parts don't disappear when we ignore them, they grow stronger in the dark. To understand Jung's view of healing, we must first understand how he saw the human mind. Unlike many thinkers of his time who viewed the mind in purely rational or surface-level terms, Jung saw it as a vast, layered structure. At the surface is the conscious mind, the part we use to think, plan, and function in the world. But beneath that lies the unconscious, which holds the forgotten, repressed, and hidden parts of ourselves. Healing, in Jung's view, begins when we're willing to look into that unconscious realm with courage. The idea that we must confront ourselves can be uncomfortable. It requires us to admit that we are not always who we pretend to be. Society teaches us to wear masks, to play roles, and to hide our flaws. But Jung believed these masks, what he called the persona, can become prisons. If we identify too strongly with the roles we play, we lose touch with our true self, and when that happens, anxiety, depression, and a sense of emptiness often follow. Jung wasn't interested in helping people become perfect. He wasn't offering a path to becoming better in a conventional sense. Instead, he encouraged people to become whole. Wholeness, for Jung, meant accepting and integrating all parts of oneself, the light and the dark, the noble and the flawed. He often said, "I'd rather be whole than good." That's a radical idea in a world that pushes us to constantly improve ourselves by rejecting or denying what we see as bad. This journey toward wholeness begins when we stop running from what we fear inside. Jung emphasized that we often project our inner conflicts onto others. We might hate in someone else what we secretly dislike about ourselves. We might fear in others the qualities we repress in our own nature. These projections are powerful clues. They point us back to the parts of ourselves we have not yet made peace with. But why is self-confrontation the first step in healing? Because as long as we live in denial of our inner reality, we remain stuck in patterns that repeat. We might change jobs, relationships, or cities thinking external changes will fix our pain. But Jung would say that until we face the unresolved material inside us, we carry our suffering wherever we go. Healing happens not when we escape ourselves, but when we truly meet ourselves. Jung likened the process of inner confrontation to descending into a cave or entering a dark forest. It's not easy. There is fear, there is resistance, but there is also transformation. Those who dare to walk this path often discover strength, clarity, and wisdom they never knew they had. They become more authentic, more grounded, and more compassionate, not just toward others, but toward themselves. In many ways, Jung's message is one of hope. He believed that within every person is the capacity to heal and grow. But that growth does not come from pretending, avoiding, or suppressing. It comes from truth, from the brave act of turning inward and asking, "Who am I really?" And then listening, truly listening, to the answer that rises from within. In today's world, where distractions are everywhere and the pressure to perform is high, Jung's insights are more relevant than ever. We are constantly encouraged to look outward for solutions. But maybe, just maybe, the most powerful answers lie within. That's what Jung believed. And for those willing to take that journey within, healing doesn't just become possible, it becomes inevitable. Carl Gustav Jung was not just a psychologist. He was a pioneer who reshaped the way we understand the human mind. Born in Switzerland in 1875, Jung began his career as a close collaborator of Sigmund Freud. But as time passed, their paths diverged. Jung felt that Freud's focus on sexuality as the root of human behavior was too narrow. He believed the psyche was far more complex and spiritual than Freud had allowed. So Jung broke away and carved his own path, one that explored the hidden depths of the unconscious, symbolism, mythology, dreams, and the quest for meaning. Jung's work wasn't just academic, he lived what he taught. After his break with Freud, Jung went through a deep psychological crisis, what he described as a confrontation with the unconscious. For several years, he explored his own mind through dreams, visions, and inner dialogues. During this time, he filled notebooks with his experiences, many of which were later published as the Red Book. It was in this intense personal journey that Jung began to form the core of his ideas about human behavior, transformation, and healing. Unlike many of his contemporaries, Jung did not believe the human mind could be fixed by simply treating symptoms or analyzing past traumas. He believed the psyche had a natural drive toward balance, growth, and wholeness. This drive, he said, could only be fulfilled if a person was willing to confront all parts of themselves, even the ones they feared or rejected. For Jung, true healing came not from eliminating darkness, but from understanding and integrating it. Jung introduced many groundbreaking concepts that are still used in psychology today. He gave us the ideas of introversion and extroversion, which are now key components of personality theory. He also created a psychological model that included the conscious ego, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the psyche that holds shared human memories and archetypes. These archetypes, universal images like the hero, the mother, the trickster, appear in myths, religions, and dreams across cultures. Jung believed they pointed to deeper truths about the human experience, but perhaps the most revolutionary idea Jung offered was that of the shadow self. This is the part of the unconscious that holds everything we deny, repress, or ignore. It contains not just what we consider bad, but also hidden strengths and creative potential. According to Jung, most people go through life without ever facing their shadow. But when they do, when they confront what they've pushed away, they unlock the door to deep transformation. Jung also placed great importance on symbols and dreams. He saw dreams as messages from the unconscious, guiding us, warning us, and showing us what we need to confront. Unlike Freud, who often interpreted dreams in a sexual context, Jung believed dreams spoke in the language of metaphor and symbol, often revealing deeper spiritual or emotional truths. One of Jung's most important contributions to psychology was the concept of individuation. This is the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, not just what society expects, not just what your ego wants, but what your deeper self is calling you to become. Individuation requires courage. It means facing your fears, your wounds, your contradictions. But it also leads to inner harmony, authenticity, and a sense of purpose. Jung didn't promise quick fixes or easy solutions. He believed that the path to healing was deeply personal and often painful. But he also believed it was sacred. His work was grounded in a deep respect for the mystery of the human soul. He was fascinated by religion, mythology, and alchemy, not as superstition, but as symbolic systems that could help us understand ourselves more fully. Even today, Jung's ideas resonate deeply with people who are searching for meaning beyond surface-level solutions. In a world obsessed with speed and success, Jung invites us to slow down, look inward, and ask deeper questions. Who am I beneath the roles I play? What have I buried in the darkness of my mind? What is my soul asking of me? Carl Jung wasn't just a psychologist. He was a guide for those brave enough to explore the wilderness within. His legacy lives on in every person who chooses to confront themselves, not to judge, but to understand, and in doing so, begins to truly heal. Carl Jung's view of the human psyche was like a vast inner landscape, one with layers, forces, and movements that go far beyond our everyday awareness. He didn't see the mind as a simple machine or a container of memories. Instead, he saw it as a living, dynamic system where different parts interact, often unconsciously, to shape who we are, how we behave, and how we heal. To understand why self-confrontation is essential for healing, we first need to understand how Jung mapped the psyche. At the center of Jung's model is the ego. This is the part of the mind we're most familiar with. It's our sense of I, the part that thinks, decides, and navigates daily life. The ego is conscious, but it's only a small portion of who we really are. Jung believed most of the mind exists below the surface in the unconscious. He divided the unconscious into two main parts, the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious. The personal unconscious contains memories, thoughts, and experiences that were once conscious but have been forgotten or repressed. This is where many of our personal shadows live. Painful memories, unmet desires, shame, guilt, or qualities we've disowned. Much of what drives our behavior comes from this hidden layer, even though we may not realize it. Deeper still is the collective unconscious, a concept unique to Jung. This is not formed from personal experience, but inherited, shared by all humans. It contains archetypes, which are universal patterns or images like the hero, the mother, the shadow, or the wise old man. These archetypes show up in dreams, myths, religions, and stories across cultures. They reflect the deeper truths of the human experience, truths we all carry whether we're aware of them or not. Jung believed the psyche strives for balance. It wants wholeness. But this balance can only be achieved when the conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche are in dialogue. When they're disconnected, when we live only from the ego and ignore the unconscious, suffering begins to appear in our lives. Anxiety, depression, addiction, chronic dissatisfaction. These symptoms are not just problems to fix, but signals. The unconscious is trying to get our attention. To Jung, healing starts when we take these signals seriously. Instead of ignoring or numbing them, we ask, what is my psyche trying to tell me? What part of myself have I rejected or silenced? This is the essence of self-confrontation, being willing to listen to the parts of the psyche that have been pushed into the dark. The psyche also includes the persona, which is the social mask we wear. It's the version of ourselves we show the world, often shaped by what others expect of us. While the persona is necessary to function in society, Jung warned against over-identifying with it. When we believe we are the mask, we lose touch with our true self. Beneath the persona lies the shadow, the part of us that holds what we deny. Confronting the shadow is painful, but it's also the doorway to transformation. Another key part of the psyche is the anima and animus, the feminine aspect in men and the masculine aspect in women. Jung believed that each person carries both energies within them, and growth comes from integrating these opposites. a man reconnecting with sensitivity, or a woman embracing assertiveness are examples of this inner balancing act. These archetypal forces challenge us to break free from rigid roles and become more whole. The ultimate goal of the psyche, according to Jung, is individuation, the process of becoming your true self by integrating all parts of your psyche, both conscious and unconscious. This journey isn't about becoming perfect, it's about becoming authentic, and it begins with self-confrontation, with turning inward and being willing to face what we find there. So, the psyche, in Jung's view, isn't just a mental system, it's a living ecosystem constantly guiding us toward wholeness. But we can't reach that wholeness by staying on the surface. We must explore the depths, question the roles we play, confront the fears we've buried, and listen to the quiet voice within. This is why Jung insisted, healing begins with self-confrontation, because only by mapping and understanding our inner world can we begin to truly transform our outer one. Carl Jung introduced the idea of the shadow self as one of the most powerful and transformative concepts in psychology. According to Jung, the shadow is everything we repress, deny, or disown about ourselves. It includes traits we consider negative, like anger, jealousy, selfishness, or weakness, but also hidden gifts and strengths we've been told not to express. The shadow is not evil. It's simply the part of us we have not yet accepted. And because we refuse to see it, it gains power over us. The shadow begins to form in childhood. As we grow up, we learn what behaviors are acceptable and which are not. When a child expresses anger and is punished, that anger may be pushed into the unconscious. If a boy is taught not to cry, he may suppress his sensitivity. A girl who's told not to speak up may bury her assertiveness. These parts don't disappear, they become part of the shadow. Jung believed that the more we deny these parts, the more distorted and dangerous they become. They don't vanish. They influence us from behind the scenes. The shadow often reveals itself in subtle ways. It might come out as a sudden burst of rage, jealousy, passive aggression, or even addiction. It can also show up in our dreams, often as threatening figures or situations. Jung believed that by paying attention to these signs, we could begin to understand what our shadow is trying to show us. The goal is not to get rid of the shadow, but to integrate it by becoming aware of it, understanding it, and accepting that it is a part of who we are. One of the ways the shadow manifests is through projection. This happens when we see in others the traits we can't accept in ourselves. For example, if we deny our own ambition, we may look down on others who are driven. If we've repressed our anger, we may find ourselves constantly irritated by aggressive people. Jung explained that when we project, we are actually encountering parts of ourselves, disguised as someone else. What makes the shadow so difficult to confront is the fear of what we might find. People often avoid inner work because they're afraid that looking inside will reveal that they are bad, broken, or unworthy. But Jung argued the opposite. He believed that the shadow is not a flaw to be eliminated, but a necessary part of the whole self. Healing begins when we realize that we are not just our good intentions, polite manners, or carefully curated identities. We are also the raw, messy, emotional aspects we try to hide. And that's okay. Jung emphasized that confronting the shadow takes honesty and courage. It requires us to step away from the comfort of who we think we are and look deeper. This confrontation is never easy. It might involve feeling shame, guilt, or discomfort. But Jung believed this discomfort was a sign of growth. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The process of integrating the shadow doesn't make us more flawed, it makes us more whole." An important thing to remember is that the shadow also contains positive qualities. Many people repress their creativity, assertiveness, or sexuality because of cultural or family conditioning. By facing the shadow, we often recover lost talents, energy, and confidence. The very things we were taught to suppress can become sources of strength. Jung called this the gold in the shadow, the valuable parts of ourselves hidden beneath fear and shame. Facing the shadow also deepens our empathy. When we accept our own flaws, we become less judgmental of others. We stop seeing the world in black and white. We realize that every person has a shadow and that everyone is struggling with parts of themselves they don't fully understand. This perspective can transform relationships, reduce conflict, and foster compassion. Ultimately, the shadow is not an enemy. It is a guide. It shows us where we are stuck, what we have ignored, and what we need to reclaim. Jung didn't want people to become perfect. He wanted them to become real. And that begins when we stop running from our shadow and start listening to what it has to say. When we meet the rejected parts of ourselves with honesty and kindness, we begin to heal, not by changing who we are, but by becoming more fully ourselves. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the persona to explain the part of ourselves we show to the world, the social mask we wear to fit in, to be liked, and to fulfill roles society expects of us. The word persona comes from Latin meaning mask, like the ones worn by actors in ancient theater. According to Jung, the persona is not who we truly are, but who we pretend to be in order to function in a social environment. We all have a persona. It's the version of ourselves we bring to work, to school, to family gatherings. It's shaped by cultural expectations, upbringing, career roles, and social norms. For example, someone might wear the persona of the responsible parent, the strong leader, or the happy friend. These roles can be helpful. They allow us to navigate different situations and interact with others more smoothly. The problem arises when we forget that the persona is only a part of us, not our whole identity. Jung warned that over-identifying with the persona can be dangerous. When we believe we are the mask, we become disconnected from our inner self. We start living for others, saying what they want to hear, doing what they expect, and hiding parts of ourselves that don't fit the image we're trying to maintain. Over time, this creates inner conflict. A person might look successful on the outside, but feel empty, lost, or anxious inside. That's the cost of living through the mask. For Jung, healing requires us to confront the persona and ask an essential question: is this really me? We have to peel back the layers of performance and explore what lies beneath. Often we discover that the roles we play were adopted out of fear or pressure, not choice. A man might realize he's been acting tough all his life because he was taught that vulnerability is weakness. A woman might uncover that her constant niceness was a way to avoid conflict. These insights can be unsettling, but they are also liberating. Jung didn't suggest we should throw away the persona completely. He understood that it serves a purpose. We need some kind of mask to function in society. The goal is not to destroy the persona, but to become aware of it, to stop confusing it with the self. When we're conscious of our persona, we can use it wisely instead of being used by it. We can show different sides of ourselves in different settings without losing our authenticity. A major reason people resist self-confrontation is because they are deeply attached to their persona. It gives them identity, security, and a sense of belonging. Letting go of it can feel like death, like losing who you are. But Jung believed that beneath the mask lies something much deeper, the self, the true, whole, and unique center of our being. To find the self, we must first face the false self we've been living through. This confrontation often stirs anxiety. When the persona begins to crack, a person may go through an identity crisis. They may no longer know what they believe, what they want, or who they are. While painful, this confusion is a sign of growth. It means the old mask no longer fits. Something more authentic is trying to emerge. And this emergence is what Jung called the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming your real self. Another consequence of living only through the persona is projection. When we deny our true thoughts and feelings, we often see them in others. For example, someone who hides their insecurity may become overly critical of others. Someone who suppresses their sadness may judge others for being too emotional. This is the psyche's way of trying to balance itself. What we reject inwardly returns to us outwardly. By confronting the persona, we start reclaiming our wholeness. We realize we are more than the roles we play. We can be strong and sensitive, joyful and sorrowful, confident and confused. We are not fixed masks. We are fluid, evolving beings. The more we accept this, the more peace we find within. In the end, Jung's message is clear. The mask is not the problem. The problem is forgetting that it's a mask. Healing begins when we take it off, at least in private, and look into the mirror of our inner world. It is there, beyond the persona, that the true self begins to speak. And when we listen, we begin to truly live. One of Carl Jung's most powerful psychological insights is the concept of projection. It is the process by which we unconsciously transfer our own thoughts, feelings, or traits onto someone else. In simple terms, when something inside us feels too difficult to accept, whether it's a fear, desire, weakness, or strength, we push it out of our awareness and see it in other people instead. Jung believed projection is one of the main ways the unconscious communicates with us, especially when we are not yet ready to confront something within ourselves. Projection usually begins with denial. Let's say someone believes they must always be kind and selfless. This belief becomes part of their conscious identity, but any feelings of anger, resentment, or selfishness, natural human emotions, get pushed into the shadow. Instead of recognizing these feelings as their own, they begin to notice and criticize those traits in others. She's so selfish, or he's always angry. They don't realize that what bothers them most in others may actually live inside themselves, unacknowledged and unaccepted. Jung believed that whatever we project onto others is a mirror. It reflects a disowned part of ourselves. When we meet someone and feel an intense emotional reaction, either strongly positive or strongly negative, it can be a sign of projection. That reaction tells us more about our inner world than about the other person. For example, someone who's secretly afraid of failure may harshly judge others who seem lazy or unmotivated. Or someone who's buried their own creativity might feel both admiration and envy toward a free-spirited artist. This is why Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. The people who trigger us, who frustrate, offend, or even fascinate us, are often unconsciously helping us meet the parts of ourselves we've hidden. It's not always comfortable, but it's deeply valuable. Every projection is a clue pointing to something we've yet to face. Projection doesn't only work with negative traits, it also applies to positive qualities we've disowned. Jung called this the golden shadow. Sometimes we project our potential onto others because we don't believe we're worthy of it ourselves. We admire someone's confidence, talent, or beauty, not realizing that we too have those qualities in seed form, but they remain buried because we've been taught to suppress them, or we fear what might happen if we embrace them. Unconscious projection can also damage relationships. When we expect others to fulfill roles based on our hidden needs, like expecting a partner to be our savior, or blaming a boss for controlling us when we fear our own passivity, we create unrealistic expectations and repeated conflict. Jung emphasized that the only way to break these patterns is through self-awareness. We must stop looking outward and begin asking inward, why does this bother me? What part of me am I seeing in this person? Becoming aware of our projections is a critical step in self-confrontation. It's like turning a mirror toward ourselves. At first, this can be difficult. We may feel ashamed or defensive. But over time, we begin to see that these projections are not signs of weakness. They're invitations to grow. They show us what we've been running from and where we need healing. The good news is that once we recognize a projection, we can reclaim it. Instead of blaming or idolizing others, we take responsibility for our feelings and begin to reintegrate the lost part of ourselves. This is how we become whole. The qualities we once feared or admired from a distance become part of our conscious self. We no longer need to fight them, hide them, or place them onto others. Jung believed that projection is not just a psychological defense, it's a spiritual opportunity. It's a path toward deeper self-knowledge. Every person we meet, especially those who stir strong emotions, becomes a teacher. They show us who we are beneath the surface, beyond the mask. When we stop projecting, we start seeing people more clearly, not as reflections of our fears or fantasies, but as they really are. And more importantly, we begin to see ourselves more clearly. We no longer have to be afraid of what we carry inside. Instead, we can turn toward it with curiosity, compassion, and courage. This is where healing truly begins, not by changing others, but by recognizing that what we see in them might actually be the part of us we most need to understand. Carl Jung believed that the ultimate goal of human life is not perfection, but wholeness. He called the lifelong process of becoming a whole person individuation. It's the journey of integrating all the different parts of the psyche, both conscious and unconscious, into a unified, authentic self. In Jung's view, healing doesn't happen by fixing symptoms or forcing positivity. It happens when we confront ourselves, embrace our complexity, and become the person we were always meant to be. Individuation begins when we realize that we are not just the roles we play, the values we were taught, or the image we present to the world. There is more to us, parts we've ignored, denied, or forgotten. To individuate means to turn inward and explore this hidden inner landscape. It's a process of discovering who we really are beneath the expectations, personas, and projections. This journey often starts with a crisis or a deep sense of dissatisfaction. Life may feel empty, repetitive, or meaningless. The outer world may still be functioning, but something feels off inside. According to Jung, this inner discomfort is not a failure. It's a signal. It means the psyche is calling for transformation. The self, the deeper, wiser center of our being, is asking to be heard. Individuation is not about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering what has always been there, hidden beneath layers of conditioning. This process involves meeting the shadow, confronting the persona, and withdrawing our projections. Each of these steps strips away what is false or incomplete, making room for something more real to emerge. It's like carving a sculpture from stone, not by adding, but by removing what doesn't belong. One of the most important parts of individuation is listening to the unconscious. The unconscious speaks through dreams, fantasies, symbols, and even physical symptoms. Jung encouraged people to keep a dream journal and reflect on recurring images or patterns. These aren't just random thoughts, they are messages from the deeper self, guiding us toward balance and integration. Another key element in individuation is learning to hold opposites. The human psyche is full of contradictions. We are kind and cruel, strong and weak, joyful and sorrowful. Individuation doesn't mean choosing one side and rejecting the other. It means learning to live with both. When we accept our contradictions, we stop living in inner conflict. We make peace with ourselves, not by being perfect, but by being complete. This is why individuation is not a straight line. It's a spiral, full of ups and downs, breakthroughs and setbacks. At times, it may feel lonely because it requires stepping away from social norms or group identities. But Jung believed this loneliness has value. When we separate from the crowd, we create space to hear our own inner voice. We begin to live not according to what others want, but what the self requires. Individuation is not selfish. It's deeply responsible. When we become more conscious of who we are, we stop projecting our issues onto others. We take ownership of our actions and emotions. We develop empathy because we understand our own depths, and therefore respect the inner lives of others. A person who is individuating becomes a healing presence, not because they are perfect, but because they are real. Jung also emphasized that individuation connects us with something larger than ourselves. As we journey inward, we tap into the collective unconscious, the shared well of human experience. We begin to see that our personal struggles are part of a universal pattern. My pain is not just mine, it's something many others carry. This awareness dissolves isolation and brings a sense of meaning. Ultimately, individuation is the path to authenticity. It's about becoming the person your soul has always wanted you to be. Not a copy of others, not a product of fear, but a self-aware, balanced, integrated human being. This is not easy work. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to face discomfort. But it is the deepest form of healing available. Carl Jung believed that each person has a unique path to walk, a path that can't be handed to them, but must be discovered within. Individuation is that path. And though it can be challenging, it is also the most rewarding journey a person can take. Because at the end of it, we don't just survive life, we become fully alive. Carl Jung saw dreams not as meaningless or random, but as deeply significant. To him, dreams were a direct line of communication from the unconscious to the conscious mind. They are symbolic stories the psyche tells us while we sleep, revealing truths, fears, desires, and unresolved conflicts that we might not be ready or able to face during waking life. In Jung's view, dreams are not just passive experiences, they are active guides in the process of healing and individuation. Jung believed that every dream has a purpose. Even the most confusing or frightening ones contain a message that, if understood, can help us grow. While modern psychology often looks at dreams as reflections of daily stress or suppressed desires, Jung saw them as much more than that. He believed dreams came from a deeper part of the psyche, the self, and that they often act as a mirror, showing us what we've ignored, denied, or forgotten. The language of dreams is symbolic. The unconscious doesn't speak in words and logic, but in images, metaphors, and emotions. For example, dreaming of a house might represent the self, with different rooms symbolizing different aspects of the psyche. Dreaming of being chased might reflect something we're avoiding in waking life. Animals, strangers, storms, and even objects can all carry symbolic meaning. According to Jung, interpreting these symbols is not about using a universal dream dictionary, but about understanding what those images mean to the dreamer personally. Jung encouraged people to write down their dreams and reflect on them regularly. He believed that recurring themes or symbols pointed to unresolved inner material, parts of ourselves seeking awareness and integration. These might be parts of the shadow, projections, or forgotten desires. Sometimes a dream reveals a deep fear we've been avoiding. Other times it offers a surprising solution to a problem. Often it brings up a truth we haven't dared to admit. For Jung, ignoring our dreams is like ignoring a part of ourselves. The unconscious doesn't stop trying to reach us just because we aren't listening. In fact, the more we repress or deny something, the louder the unconscious can become, through nightmares, anxiety, or even physical symptoms. Dreams are one of its gentler ways to speak. They can show us who we are beneath the persona, beyond the mask we wear during the day. A powerful example of Jung's approach is the idea of the compensatory function of dreams. This means that dreams often balance our conscious attitude. If we are too proud, we might dream of being humiliated. If we're overly rational, we might dream of wild chaos. If we're feeling weak in waking life, our dream might feature us as a hero. The unconscious is always trying to bring us into wholeness by balancing the parts of ourselves that are out of sync. Another fascinating idea in Jungian dream theory is the concept of archetypes. These are universal symbols found in myths, religions, and dreams across cultures. The hero, the mother, the wise old man, the trickster, these figures often show up in dreams, carrying deep psychological meaning. When we dream of these archetypes, it usually signals something important happening in our inner world. The dream might be telling us we're entering a new phase of life, facing a major decision, or confronting a deep wound. But Jung also warned against overanalyzing dreams. He believed the best way to work with dreams was with openness and humility. Rather than trying to control or solve a dream, he encouraged people to build a relationship with their unconscious. Ask the dream, "What are you trying to show me?" Let the symbol speak and trust that understanding will unfold over time. Interpretation is not always immediate. Sometimes we only understand a dream months or years later. Healing, in Jung's view, begins when we listen to the parts of ourselves we've ignored. Dreams are one of the purest expressions of those parts. They bypass our ego, our defenses, and our daily distractions to deliver a message from the soul. And though their language may be strange, they always speak truth. To truly confront ourselves, we must be willing to enter the world of dreams with curiosity and respect. There we find pieces of the puzzle we didn't even know were missing. There, in the quiet of the night, the unconscious reveals its wisdom, not to shame us, but to guide us. And when we begin to listen, we also begin to heal. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the shadow as one of the most crucial elements in understanding human behavior and the journey toward healing. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we reject, deny, or push into the unconscious because they don't fit the image we want to present to the world, or even the image we want to believe about ourselves. It contains everything from hidden fears, weaknesses, and desires to qualities society may label as unacceptable or bad. The shadow is not just negative traits. It includes anything that we don't consciously recognize or accept. It may hold anger, jealousy, greed, or selfishness, but also creative potential, courage, and passion that we've suppressed out of fear or shame. Jung argued that everyone has a shadow, and it is inevitable because no one is perfectly good or bad. The shadow exists in every person, silently shaping behavior from beneath the surface. One of the key reasons we develop a shadow is social conditioning. From childhood, we learn which feelings or impulses are wrong or unacceptable. For example, a child taught that anger is bad might push that feeling deep inside instead of expressing it. Over time, this denied anger becomes part of the shadow. The more we hide these parts, the stronger and more powerful the shadow becomes, influencing us unconsciously. Jung famously said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This means that true healing and growth begin only when we face the shadow directly. Pretending it doesn't exist or trying to be purely positive creates imbalance. The shadow is part of us, and until we acknowledge it, it will control us from the shadows, often in ways we don't understand. The process of confronting the shadow is challenging and sometimes frightening because it forces us to face the aspects of ourselves we least want to admit. It requires brutal honesty and courage to look at our anger, jealousy, or selfishness without judgment. But Jung believed this confrontation is essential for becoming whole. When we deny the shadow, we often project it onto others. This means we see the negative traits we refuse to accept in ourselves as flaws in other people. For example, if someone represses their own selfishness, they might constantly accuse others of being selfish. This projection creates conflict and misunderstanding, both in relationships and within society. Embracing the shadow, on the other hand, allows us to reclaim these hidden parts. This doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse, but understanding and integrating them so they no longer control us unconsciously. When the shadow is integrated, it becomes a source of strength, creativity, and authenticity. The energy once locked in repression is released and transformed. Jung viewed the shadow as a kind of inner partner in our growth. It challenges us to confront our limitations and fears, but also offers gifts. Many great artists, leaders, and thinkers found inspiration by working through their shadow. Facing the shadow opens the door to self-acceptance and deeper compassion, not just for ourselves, but for others, recognizing that everyone carries a shadow. To begin working with the shadow, Jung suggested practices like dream analysis, journaling, or honest self-reflection. Asking questions like, "What do I deny about myself?" or "What traits in others annoy me the most?" can reveal clues about what's hidden. It's important to approach the shadow with kindness and patience rather than shame or fear. Healing truly begins when we stop running from the shadow and start listening to it. Instead of a source of shame, it becomes a wellspring of wisdom and power. By embracing the hidden self, we move closer to the authentic person we were meant to be, whole, balanced, and free. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the persona as the social mask we present to the world. Derived from the Latin word for mask, the persona is the part of ourselves we shape and show to others to fit into society's expectations and norms. It's how we want to be seen. The polished, acceptable version of ourselves designed to protect our inner self from judgment, rejection, or harm. The persona develops early in life as we learn how to behave in different social contexts, at school, with family, or at work. It's necessary because it helps us navigate relationships, gain approval, and function within society. For example, we might adopt the persona of a confident leader, a caring parent, or a responsible professional. These roles help us meet others' expectations and fulfill practical needs. However, Jung warned that the persona is only a mask, an artificial identity that can become problematic when we identify too closely with it. When we mistake the persona for our true self, we lose touch with the deeper parts of our being. We may sacrifice our authenticity to maintain an image, hiding our vulnerabilities, doubts, or unconventional thoughts. This can lead to inner emptiness, confusion, and a sense of being disconnected from who we really are. The danger of over-identifying with the persona is that it limits self-awareness and growth. Because the persona is designed to please and conform, it often suppresses the shadow and other unconscious parts. When these hidden parts are denied for too long, they can erupt in unexpected ways, causing emotional pain or conflict. For example, someone who always plays the role of the perfect, cheerful friend might secretly struggle with sadness or anger they dare not express. Jung emphasized that the persona is necessary, but should never become the whole identity. He encouraged people to recognize the persona as a role they play, not the essence of who they are. This awareness allows for more flexibility and honesty. It frees us to let the mask slip sometimes and show our true feelings and imperfections without fear. An important step in healing is learning to balance the persona with the rest of the psyche. This means understanding when the mask serves us and when it confines us. It also means accepting that others will see parts of us that don't fit our ideal image. And that's okay. Real connection happens when we reveal our authentic self, not just the persona. Jung also pointed out that society often pressures us to maintain rigid personas. Cultural expectations, family roles, and professional identities can make it difficult to break free from these masks. But the journey of individuation requires us to peel back these layers and meet the deeper self beneath. When we confront the persona honestly, we begin to see its limitations and the freedom beyond it. We learn to integrate the mask with the shadow and the true self, allowing all parts to coexist. This integration brings a sense of wholeness and authenticity. In daily life, this might mean expressing feelings we usually hide, questioning roles we no longer find meaningful, or simply being more vulnerable with others. It's a process of letting go of the need to control how others see us and embracing our complexity. Jung believed that healing begins when we stop living behind a mask and start living as our true selves. The persona is not the enemy, it's a tool. But it must be balanced with courage and self-awareness. Only then can we move beyond superficial appearances and connect deeply with ourselves and others. Ultimately, the persona is part of the dance of life, sometimes necessary, sometimes restrictive. Recognizing it for what it is frees us to be more genuine, more whole, and more fully alive. Carl Jung believed that healing and personal growth start with a courageous act called self-confrontation. This means turning the spotlight inward and honestly examining every part of ourselves, the good, the bad, the light, and the dark. It's about looking beyond our carefully constructed personas and comfortable narratives to face the hidden truths within our unconscious mind. Though difficult and often uncomfortable, Jung saw self-confrontation as the essential first step toward wholeness and psychological freedom. Self-confrontation requires a level of honesty and bravery that many avoid. It means acknowledging feelings, desires, and thoughts we usually suppress because they make us uncomfortable, ashamed, or afraid. For example, someone might have to admit feelings of jealousy, selfishness, or insecurity that contradict their self-image of being kind or strong. Or they might confront fears of failure or abandonment that they usually push away. This process can be painful because it breaks down illusions and forces us to meet parts of ourselves we've tried to ignore. Jung believed that without self-confrontation, these hidden parts continue to influence us unconsciously. They show up as emotional reactions, repeated patterns, or inner conflicts we don't understand. For example, a person might react with unexplained anger toward a certain type of person, not realizing they are projecting their own rejected traits onto others. Without self-awareness, we remain trapped in these unconscious loops, unable to grow. Self-confrontation is not about self-judgment or punishment. Jung emphasized that it's a compassionate process, one where we become curious observers of our own psyche. It involves asking deep questions like, what am I afraid to admit? What parts of myself do I avoid? How do these parts influence my life? Answering these questions honestly helps us bring unconscious material into conscious awareness, where it can be understood and integrated. This process often reveals the shadow, the collection of rejected qualities, and challenges us to accept these parts rather than deny them. It also exposes how tightly we cling to our persona and projections, showing us where we've been living in illusion rather than reality. Jung compared self-confrontation to a journey through a dark forest. It may feel scary and confusing, but the only way out is through. When we face the unknown inside ourselves, we gain new insight and strength. The darkness that once terrified us begins to lose its power. Self-confrontation also involves recognizing patterns in our lives, especially those that cause pain or dissatisfaction. By reflecting on these patterns with openness, we can see their roots in unconscious beliefs or fears. For instance, someone who repeatedly chooses unhealthy relationships might discover they fear loneliness or have low self-worth. Recognizing these unconscious motivators helps break destructive cycles. Importantly, self-confrontation is an ongoing process. It doesn't end with one realization or breakthrough. Our psyche is complex and constantly evolving. Each time we confront a new layer, we grow deeper in self-awareness and healing. Jung believed that this process is what leads to individuation, becoming an integrated, authentic self. Without self-confrontation, individuation is impossible. Only by seeing ourselves clearly can we begin to heal and live fully. In practical terms, self-confrontation can be supported through practices like journaling, therapy, meditation, or dream analysis, methods that encourage introspection and self-reflection. These tools help us hold a mirror to ourselves with kindness and patience. Ultimately, self-confrontation is an act of love toward oneself. It's saying, I am willing to see all of who I am, not just what I want to be seen. It's the beginning of true healing because it frees us from the shadows that control us and opens the door to wholeness. Jung's message is clear. Healing begins when we stop running from ourselves and start facing our inner truth with courage. Only then can we move beyond suffering and step into a fuller, richer life. Carl Jung described individuation as the central process of personal development and healing. It's the lifelong journey of becoming our true whole selves by integrating all parts of our psyche, both conscious and unconscious. Individuation is not about becoming perfect or ideal, but about embracing complexity and achieving inner harmony. At its core, individuation involves bringing unconscious elements into consciousness. This means recognizing and accepting parts of ourselves we may have ignored, denied, or rejected, like the shadow, the anima, or animus, our inner feminine or masculine, and other hidden aspects. The goal is to unify these fragments with our conscious identity, creating a balanced and authentic self. Jung believed that most people live fragmented lives, caught between their public personas and their unconscious desires or fears. This disconnection leads to inner conflict, dissatisfaction, and sometimes psychological illness. Individuation offers a path to healing by reconnecting us with our deeper selves. The process often begins with self-confrontation, where we courageously face our shadow and other unconscious material. Dreams, active imagination, and symbols often guide this work, revealing insights and showing the way forward. The journey is unique for each individual and can be both challenging and rewarding. Individuation is also about moving beyond societal and cultural expectations. Jung believed that true growth requires stepping away from purely external definitions of success or identity and exploring what it means to be authentically ourselves. This may mean questioning roles, beliefs, and values we once accepted without reflection. A key part of individuation is developing a relationship with the self, which Jung described as the central archetype of wholeness and unity. The self represents the totality of the psyche and the guiding force toward integration and balance. When we align with the self, we experience a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Individuation brings greater psychological flexibility and resilience. Instead of being controlled by unconscious impulses or rigid personas, we learn to respond to life with awareness and choice. This leads to healthier relationships, greater creativity, and a richer inner life. Importantly, individuation is a lifelong process. There is no final endpoint, only continual growth and deepening self-awareness. Challenges and crises often mark turning points on this path, pushing us to expand our understanding and embrace new parts of ourselves. Jung's concept of individuation reminds us that healing is not about erasing parts of ourselves, but about bringing everything into harmony. It is a sacred journey of self-discovery, where every experience, light or dark, contributes to becoming whole. In embracing individuation, we move beyond fear and fragmentation toward a life of authenticity, balance, and inner peace. The true healing Jung believed was possible when we confront and embrace ourselves fully. Carl Jung believed that the final and most profound step in healing and personal growth is self-acceptance. After the often difficult journey of self-confrontation, shadow work, and individuation, self-acceptance is the transformative moment when we embrace all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark, the strengths and the weaknesses, the known and the hidden, without judgment or resistance. Self-acceptance is more than just tolerating our flaws or mistakes. It is a deep, compassionate recognition that every part of our psyche has value and meaning. Jung taught that when we resist or reject parts of ourselves, we create inner conflict and fragmentation. This inner disharmony often manifests as anxiety, depression, or self-sabotage. But when we accept ourselves fully, we restore harmony within, allowing healing and growth to flow naturally. One of the reasons self-acceptance is so powerful is that it disarms the inner critic, the voice inside that judges, shames, or condemns us. This inner critic often originates from early experiences and societal messages that taught us to measure our worth by external standards. By learning to accept ourselves as we are, we silence that harsh voice and create space for kindness and understanding. Jung saw self-acceptance as a gateway to authenticity. When we stop pretending to be someone we are not and stop hiding parts of ourselves, we live more freely and honestly. Authenticity attracts genuine relationships and meaningful experiences because it is rooted in truth rather than illusion. Importantly, self-acceptance also means embracing our shadow. Instead of fearing or hiding our darker impulses, we acknowledge them as part of our human complexity. This acceptance does not mean acting on harmful behaviors, but recognizing their existence and learning to channel their energy constructively. Jung believed that self-acceptance connects us to a deeper sense of wholeness. It integrates the conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche, the persona and the shadow, the individual and the collective. This integration brings a profound sense of peace and balance. The process of self-acceptance is ongoing, not a one-time event. Life continually challenges us with new experiences and growth opportunities, but each act of acceptance strengthens our resilience and deepens our connection with ourselves. Practices that support self-acceptance include mindfulness, self-compassion exercises, therapy, and reflective journaling. These help cultivate a gentle, non-judgmental awareness that allows us to meet ourselves with love, even in moments of difficulty. Ultimately, Jung's teaching on self-acceptance invites us to become our own allies and healers. By accepting ourselves fully, we break free from the chains of shame and self-rejection and step into a life of authenticity, balance, and profound inner peace. Healing begins not by changing who we are, but by embracing who we truly are, completely and unconditionally.